When Gordon Hayward signed with the Boston Celtics this summer, it signaled an end of an era in Utah as he decided to leave behind a young and talented core of players to join what eventually became something of a super team. By reuniting with his college coach Brad Stevens, Hayward was the first domino for Danny Ainge, and by the time Kyrie Irving arrived, the Celtics were finally poised to dethrone the Cavaliers. And through the first 5 minutes of opening night, it looked like they were on the right path. As we've documented before, Brad Stevens draws up some of the all-time best out-of-bounds plays, and this one was no exception. Watch the cross screen by Horford and how it lures Jay Crowder 2 steps higher than his man. This opens up the lob from Kyrie to Hayward, and as he broke to the basket, LeBron James expertly reads it and gets into position to defend. And this is the instant the Boston Celtics season took a turn in the wrong direction. Jay Crowder hooked his right arm over Hayward's left, causing his body to twist to its left. LeBron then makes contact with the left side of Hayward's chest, throwing his upper body backwards. As he descends, notice how his toe points downwards, a key component to the injury. I recommend turning away at this point if you don't want to see this. It's a horrific sight. The leg folds underneath his weight and he breaks the tibia, leaving his foot pointing in the wrong direction. I brought well-known athletic trainer Jeff Stotts onto the show to lend his expert insights into the nature of this injury and how it unfolded, plus what he thinks the prognosis will be for Hayward going forward.
You know, it's almost a freak thing. I hate to use that kind of fluky terminology, but you watch the play, he goes up, he doesn't come down on anybody, which is kind of the classic mechanism of injury for an ankle injury. It's, you know, usually get your foot forced into an inversion or the opposite way. But he comes down almost on his toe. And so that starts the generation of force, and then his whole body is landing through his foot, and that stress has to be diverted somewhere, and unfortunately it was diverted to his ankle. And it forced the dislocation as he came down. You know, I've watched it a couple times, as hard as that is to believe. You know, we like to see kind of the mechanism of injury. And I don't think Crowder got him. I don't think LeBron James got him. I think it's just one of those things that the timing of it was unlucky. You know, we tell our patients sometimes that sometimes you can't explain injuries. It's just a happen chance. You won the lottery. That was an unfortunate lottery of this particular point with this particular stress at this particular angle resulted in your damage.
So the landing, though, wasn't exactly like a pristine landing. I think that there was probably a little bit of contact on the way up or while he was in midair by, I think, maybe like a forearm, whatever. Nothing out of the ordinary. It seems like that's the kind of thing that could cause a guy, especially who's pretty powerful like Hayward, to start to drift, right? That's sort of what's going on the way down. You're not landing the way you've done a million times before.
Sure, and you can. Then that's what I kind of hinted at. He landed more on his toe rather than almost kind of absorbing the impact as he fell. He seemed off balance as he came down, and again that stress generates from the fall at that particular angle resulted in that break and dislocation.
So the toe kind of gets stuck in the ground. Now there's all this weight coming down, and then the knee bends, I think, right? And does that add to sort of the torque that's going on?
A little bit. You've got a rotational component of it for sure. You know, I'd like to see some more angles of the incident. Unfortunately, they're not going to show it, which may be a good thing. But at the same time, there was only so many cameras on him at one time, and a lot of, rightfully so, have stopped showing the play because of how gruesome it was. But you kind of wonder where his hips were. When you look at something like this, you want to look at the whole kinetic chain. So you're looking at the hips, you're looking at the knee, you're looking at the ankle. And you really want to try to differentiate the various stresses placed on the entire thing. It's likely he almost came down what we call a closed chain, where that it was rigid. He came down hard on that leg rather than there being some kind of absorption through the foot, ankle, knee, hip, like we talked about.
Well, before we talk about some of the fundamentals of landing, which I think aren't talked about at all, I do want to ask you, let's say you were working for the Celtics and you have to run out there as soon as it happens. What is the protocol? What did they do? What are you supposed to do in those situations?
Well, you run out there and you definitely you want to check the player and make sure how active is he, what's his responsive level, because you're really trying to get some kind of feedback for them. Let them direct you. Is it your knee? Is it your ankle? Obviously, in this situation, you could see it was the ankle. And then the other medical professionals that were at the arena come over. It is a collective effort, and I know there have been reports that the medical professionals that were all there reduced the ankle or returned it to its alignment on the court. So the reason they do that is they want to make sure that there are no neurovascular structures like blood vessels or nerves that are being compromised with that violent dislocation. So it also gives the patient some pain relief. So they relocate it and it kind of puts it back into alignment. And I mean, watch Hayward's face. He obviously is in shock and he's in pain. But once they realign it, he's very stoic. It's very impressive the way he composed himself and kept himself. I mean, like I said, I'm sure part of it was shock, but if it was me, I probably would be rolling around on the ground screaming.
And when you say shock, it's the clinical version of shock, like when you get a gunshot wound and you go into shock. That's the same kind of thing, right? Aren't like something getting in your bloodstream and all that kind of stuff happening?
Yes, physiologically, your body is trying to basically handle what's happening. It's trying to understand and process this sudden flood of information that's coming from the injury site.
Okay, so they reduced it. They actually snap it, I guess, back into place, and it was hard to see. Like, was this a compound fracture? Is there any more information about that?
I haven't seen anything that it broke through the skin. It's hard to tell with the angle. We've seen the picture of the shoe off to the side, and you can see kind of that ankle joint displacement. But because there is a sock there, you didn't see it bursting out through the sock. So it could have come through the skin. I've actually dealt with a similar injury where the athlete had a similar injury, and it wasn't until we removed the socks and shoes that we realized, oh wow, this is also an open dislocation, because we could see the bone sticking out.
Right. Now, in that area of the leg, is that a heavy bleeding area where it would be a lot of blood?
It can be. Like I said, there are neurovascular structures there, so there are arteries and veins that run down to supply blood to the foot, and those could be compromised. It doesn't seem like that was the case with Hayward, fortunately. Right.
Now, is there a connection between this type of injury and the other gruesome ones we've seen, Paul George and then Ware over at Louisville? Are these similar?
Similar, but what we're talking about here is where the break occurred. In the case of Kevin Ware and Paul George, they had a mid-shaft fracture, and both bones broke. As for now, all we've heard is that Hayward has a tibia fracture. The fibula reportedly remains intact. Both George and Ware suffered fractures in the mid-shaft of their tibia and their fibula. I believe Ware's was open as well was George. So what we had there is, you're trying to, again, keep the area clean, sterile. You want to minimize infection as much as possible, but also transport for almost immediate surgery. Both those players had rods put in. And it doesn't sound like, based on the injury, that Hayward would have a rod put in his surgery. He'd be more in line for something like a surgical screw, some surgical screws and a plate, because, again, varying location of the injury itself.
So now so that's a great information to figure out how they're going to actually repair this thing. He went into surgery today, so I guess last night he did it. So the question now is, what is the prognosis for a guy coming back from this kind of injury?
Well, the good news is some early reports have indicated the ligament damage was minimum. That it was a clean break, basically meaning that, and the term clean break is a little bit redundant because a break is break. Well, it sounds like there wasn't a whole lot of displacement of the bone, meaning it didn't shift dramatically or there wasn't a bunch of fragments that they have to kind of slowly piece together. What we're looking at here is they're going to have to go in and realign those fragments, screw them down. And again, it all depends on the location of the break, which hasn't been made public yet. And then again, any other potential damage. You worry about the top of the talus there. Is it got any damage to the articular cartilage in that area? And so there are a lot of factors still in play that we don't know, but we do know that it was needed to be repaired surgically, and the way they do that is generally with a plate and screw.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, did the ankle break and the tibia, or is it sort of just the one or the other?
So the tibia and the fibula come down at their distal ends, and those are they create the malleoli, which are those big bumps on your ankle if you reach down to feel your ankle. Mm-hmm. The left and the right. The right is in the inside aspect is your medial malleolus, and that's part of your tibia. The left side is your lateral malleolus, which is part of your fibula. Now they form a roof known as the ankle mortise, which is kind of the start of the ankle joint, and then the talus joint, the bone of the foot, sits in between there, underneath there. When you have a high ankle sprain, the roof of that is kind of damaged. So you have, it's the distal tib-fib joint is what we call it. So in this case, an ankle dislocation means the talus came out of place, and then you also had your tibia fracture. So technically, the tibia is part of the ankle. It helps form part of the ankle. So the term ankle fracture really depends on where the location is. We've had other guys in the NBA suffer ankle fractures, but maybe they suffered their fibula fracture. Jason Kidd broke his ankle. Grant Hill broke his ankle. Even guys like Shane Larkin have suffered these injuries, but more than likely those were fibula fractures and not tibia fractures.
I see. So it's not broken in two different places, like vertically, like one high up on his shin and then lower down by the ankle, right?
As far as we know right now, we just know it's a tibia fracture. So likely it's that distal end of the tibia. Okay,
great. Well, so we have this idea of what they're going to do with the surgery and how they're going to replace this or repair it. I guess so. The question is, what is the time frame here? What do you think? I mean, looking at maybe even I know Paul George might have sounded even more severe, but what do we know about his the timetable for recovery?
So the big thing here is the dislocation does need to be factored in, because for something like that to happen, you've got to have some level of soft tissue damage. Again, we're hearing reports that there was no ligament damage, but that likely means there was no true ligament tear. So there's no ankle ligament reconstruction needed. However, it seems very likely, based on what we're seeing, is there was some level of ligament damage. The ligaments are designed to stabilize bone and try to keep it in place. So he's going to have to deal with that, which makes it a little bit different than Paul George and Ware. The other issue here is, bottom line is it's more of a weight-bearing area in terms of functionality. There's kind of a poor metaphor, but if you take it like a plastic fork and you broke it in the middle of the handle, you could still use the fork. You potentially even fix it by using some Scotch tape, and it would still be a fork again. But if I were to break the prongs off, it's changed the function of what the fork is. So you got to go in. It's a little bit trickier to fix those prongs. You could eventually get it back to doing what it's supposed to do. I know that's maybe a poor metaphor here, but it very kind of creates a similar idea of what we're trying to work with here.
And so, any idea for time frame?
It's his agent has told Wojnarowski that it sounds like it's going to be a season ender. Looking through my injury database, the only real comparable example was a guy that suffered an open or dislocation and fracture in practice. And that happened in November, and he missed the remaining 68 games of the season. So this is a significant injury. It's one of high magnitude. And while I think there was some hope that he could potentially be back by the end of the year, I think they're likely going to play it safe and take some of the pressure off his recovery and not feel like you need to rush back, make sure that you're not only focusing on the bone healing, the soft tissue healing, but also preparing your body for basically high performance again. You've got to work on things like proprioception and timing. And bottom line is the ankle is so critical to player movement, with lateral movement, especially a guy like Hayward and the way he moves. So it's a complex recovery that will be broken down into stages and hopefully allow him to return to a high level.
Right. So basically, he should, or it's certainly very possible that he'll return to the way he played beforehand.
We hope so. Plenty of things can crop up during rehab and recovery, but he's got a good chance. By all accounts, Hayward is a guy that works extremely hard, has a good mindset. He's in a good environment in Boston. The medical staff there is a well-respected group. He's in an environment with familiarity with his head coach. He's like I said, in a good environment, which is going to help mentally as well as physically for him to get back and perform, hopefully, like I said, back to the same level as before.
Sure. And then we have to consider the notion of him never wanting to go up for an alley-oop again and those kind of things too, which would be very understandable. So, well, Jeff, I can't thank you enough for coming on and breaking this down in such a thorough way. I think people now can get a much better handle on what he's facing. And it sounds a bit positive where, if he does the rehab and everything goes the way they need it to, then he'll be back on the court, not by next year.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I love my job, but I hate to work because that means someone's hurt. So best wishes to Hayward. Hope his recovery goes smoothly.
Same here as well. And thanks for coming on the show. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Jeff?
Oh, I'm in.